welcome back. It's another episode of KWH Unlocked. I'm your host, Grant Lopez, President and Team Leader here at KW Heritage. And Unlocked is all about talking with our top 10% of our agents or people that have been with us at least 10 years and what advice that they can give us from their business that you can apply directly back to yours. In the past, we've had last month we had our panel from New Braunfels. We had several top performing agents in New Braunfels. We've had our top 10s from the San Antonio office. This month we wanted to do something a little different because at Heritage we offer everything under the sun, from residential, commercial, farm and ranch, luxury. And so today we wanted to do one with some of our top commercial agents. And so with me, to my right, I have Eric Schaffner. Eric, thanks for being here. Labib Hashim, Mark Hampton from our New Braunfels office, and Patricia Chavez here in San Antonio. And they're going to really walk us through what is commercial like, what are the do's and don'ts. Just dropped my phone, but that's all right. And what can they offer us that could be applied back to your business. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. And guys, welcome. Thank you for being here. So Mark, I'm going to start with you real quick. Tell us briefly how you got into commercial, how long you've been doing it.
Oh, goodness gracious. Thanks, Grant. 27 years. I've been in real estate 27 years in New Braunfels entirely. Started in commercial real estate really early, very soon in my career. My wife is actually in real estate. She's in commercial real estate for 40 years. And so it just kind of just came very natural with me. So,
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Patricia, how long have you been in commercial and what led you to commercial?
So I've been with Keller Williams Heritage now for 23 years, but I started commercial in 2007.
Yeah.
And at that point, I really wanted to dig in, and I went for my CCIM designation. It took me 3 years to get those letters, but I've had it since 2010.
I love that.
And so primarily my focus has been commercial real estate since then.
You have a really cool story about how you ended up in commercial through a client introduction. Tell us that story.
So when I first got into real estate in 2002, I handled a lot of his residential real estate, and I received an email from him in 2006 that basically said, hey, Patricia, are you really ready to start making some real money? And he invited me to meet him at one of his properties. And when I went, it was a 25-unit apartment complex that is in Monte Vista. And I was like, I can't sell this. We don't do commercial real estate. And he's like, no, I don't want you to sell it now. But if you're serious about it, I want it to be your first commercial listing.
Nice.
And he said, give me a year. I'll be ready to rock and roll on it. And so I came and spoke to our broker at the time, Craig Owen, and owner. And he put me in touch with an agent that says, if you're serious about it, go get your CCIM designation. And that's what I did for the next year.
I love that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
It is. And it turned out to
And
be
you're
a great
still
thing.
working with that client
Still
today,
working with
isn't
that
right?
client 17 years later. We're turning his properties again now. And what I love about his situation is his intention was to literally just sell his property and pay off some credit card debt. And instead, with the education that I got through being a commercial broker, was we were able to do a 1031 exchange. We were able to, he purchased a hotel, he purchased another apartment complex, and instead of keeping his regular job, he ended up being a full-time real estate owner-operator and creating generational wealth.
I love that. That is a very cool story. And I love that y'all are still working together
Still working
even today.
together,
That's
yes.
awesome. Labib, tell us, how long have you been in the industry? How long have you been in commercial, and what led you to getting into commercial?
Thank you, Grant. I've been in the industry about 7 to 8 years now. I started on the residential side and then hopped on to the commercial side about 4 years ago, primarily because we've had a family business, several of them on the commercial side, hotels and restaurants. And then, of course, with that background, construction background, I said, hey, let me jump onto the commercial side of things because of my sphere connections, people that I do know. And I guess the rest is history because I've been very successful at it and super happy that I did join the commercial side of things in addition to residential. So that's kind of where I started, and I'm loving every single piece of it.
I love that. I love that. Do you find a lot of your hotel and franchise experience goes into what you do with commercial now?
It does. It does, mainly because the folks that I do know on the hotel side, be it on the buy side or sell side, whatever it may be, and then of course the experience that I did have in managing these hotels, it all plays a big role in what I do today. And in addition to serving the clients that I serve now, whenever we go take a look at a property, or when it's time to sell a property, for example, I can definitely put on my previous hat and be able to guide them down the path correctly versus going in there blindly and not knowing anything.
Yeah. Right on. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Eric. So on top of Eric being a commercial agent, he is also our director of commercial, overseeing the entire commercial team here at Heritage. So Eric, how long have you been in the industry and in commercial, and what led you there?
So I started out as an investor in real estate probably about 15 years ago. Always had a passion for real estate, but I was working several corporate jobs, JP Morgan Chase, Accenture. I worked in oil and gas for a little while. And then when we moved back to San Antonio, I decided that I was going to get my real estate license and pursue real estate full time. So I got my real estate license about close to 10 years ago, and then have been selling commercial for about the last 7 or 8 of those years.
Nice. What led you into commercial? Was there any specific things that you were looking for if you started in residential that you said, I'd really kind of gear myself more towards commercial?
You know, due to my corporate background, again, with those companies that I mentioned, JP Morgan, Accenture, and dealing with C-level executives on a regular basis, having some financial background, working with a lot of spreadsheets and numbers, commercial was always kind of an interest and kind of just a natural fit for me. So I got my real estate license, started transacting on residential more just to kind of learn the transactional side of real estate, right? And then immediately pivoted into doing more commercial. My first commercial deal was a 21,000 square foot office building off 1604. I had a mentor that had helped me with that, and I picked it up right away and started doing more investment real estate, which led to owner user and some other various.
You had said you love Excel spreadsheets and the numbers of it all. That's one of my first questions for you guys, because I get this a lot with residential agents where they say, oh, I couldn't do commercial. I'm not great at math. There's too much numbers. How much does math and knowing the numbers work out or come into your day-to-day operations within commercial? Any of y'all? Yeah.
It's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you don't use necessarily the same formulas and things that you do because there's spreadsheets online that can help you with a lot of that stuff as well. But on the commercial aspect, you're looking at the business side of it very differently than you are residential.
Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say, in residential, when you do a market analysis on a property, you do the comp sales. But in commercial real estate, it's really not based on the comparable sales, because commercial properties, each one of them are unique in themselves. So you have to do, it's based on the income approach. And so you've got to know what cap rates are. You got to know what triple nets are. You've got to know what are expenses and what expenses aren't included in the NOI, which is your net operating income.
You're right. Yeah. Then there's the numbers of it all, but then there's also the relationships and the emotions of it all. I've always heard residential is a lot more emotional than commercial. Is that what your experiences have been as well? Or what do you see in terms of personalities of the clients you're dealing with, but then also the other agents that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, if it's someone that's looking to acquire commercial real estate for investment purposes, which I would say is the bulk majority of the clients that I work with, they're after either an IRR, a rate of return, or very simply a cash-on-cash return. Yeah. And so either the deal makes sense or it doesn't. And so we're able to fairly quickly identify if a property is going to make sense for their financial objectives.
What do you guys see as your turnaround time on the life of a transaction? Typically, if we're looking at a residential deal, we're talking about from start to finish somewhere within a 90-day typical timeline. I'm painting with a broad brush there because, of course, there's always exceptions. But in commercial, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you could be working deals for a very long time, Labib. I know you just finished one that was taking years because they were dealing with right-of-ways and TxDOT. I mean, walk us through what are timelines like in commercial.
So I would say minimum of 60 to 90 days, and it could go up to a year or two sometimes. And sometimes those deals can fall out at the very end moment. So there's a deal that I worked where somebody was working out some lease documents and TxDOT deals and whatnot for a period of 4 years before they could even get into the space, before they could start work on it. So just a lease and getting their space took 4 years. Yeah. So it can take a very long time, and you never know when that deal's going to fall out, but you just have to hang in there and be able to check off all your T's and dot all your I's throughout the whole entire process. Residential deals on the other side, may take 30, 45, 60 days, like you said, sometimes 90, depending on the situation. But commercial real estate will take a long time.
Yeah.
You can have a couple of kids by then. So.
I believe it. The one thing I've always been curious about is because, and you each have different specialties in commercial, so we can talk a little bit about that. But in a development type of thing where they're building out the finished space, are you guys with them in just the acquiring of the lease or the purchase, or are you also helping them through the development of building out that final space? And I'm also curious, is there life beyond once the lease is signed? Like, are you guys having to be in touch with them while they're in their lease? I don't know how that works. Excuse my ignorance. I'm going to rely on you guys for this one. Mark?
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, I do quite a bit of leasing. Fortunately, a lot of my leases are already finished out, so we're just leasing out spaces that are ready to go. Occasionally, you run into one where you're talking about a shell space, and then you have to get all the permits, approvals, and everything, and it takes months. It could take you over a year easily just to get the approvals before you can move in and stuff. So it's very complicated. There's a lot of loopholes in it, so you got to be very careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would add to that. So we closed on a lease deal with a Representative Methodist Hospital about 6 or 7 months ago. And this was a shell space that they were building out for a laboratory. I think it was about 17,000 square feet. And the TI, the tenant improvement, was going to take a year to do. And a lot of times you don't know what you don't know when you're negotiating the lease, but there's been several times where Methodist has come back to me and said, hey, we need to go to landlord and get, a clarification or an amendment to the lease to allow us to do what we want to do in that space.
Yeah. Labib, I know you do a lot of development. Are you walking the clients through the build out of that and the specific needs? Tell me about it.
So I am walking them through it from start to finish. From the minute we walk in, I'm able to kind of guide them down the right path, let them know if the space will, number one, work out for them, or number two, if it won't work out, why it won't work out. So that way we don't spend too much time on a space that won't work out for them. So I do spend a lot of time from start to finish, development, et cetera, until they're ready to get in with their certificate of occupancy. With me, I'm in there for the long haul. And usually development could take 6-7 months, if not more, depending on the size of the building or their build out. So just keep in mind, we're starting a lease or a buy, a purchase, and then the finish out. So I'm in there for a long time.
Yeah.
And then, we rinse, wash, repeat, go on to the next one.
Yeah.
Hey, Grant.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, real quick. These leases, they're not promulgated forms. Generally, what we're dealing with are leases that are drafted by attorneys. None of us are attorneys, so that makes it even more difficult for us, and it involves attorneys quite often. So that's a critical point for
It's interesting
agents.
because as a residential agent, and if you're watching and you're not an agent or you're new to the industry, when we say promulgated forms, those are standardized forms that the state has provided through the licensing entities or the board of realtors that we on residential use. So it's kind of a fill in the blank in most cases. But you're saying in commercial, a lot of it is attorney drafted.
And they're very hard to read.
Very hard to read. Yeah.
So it's not just fill in the blanks. Every single word is something that you may have never seen before.
So what do you guys do in those situations? Do you have attorneys you also rely on, or is it the client's responsibility to bring their attorneys in? How does that work? Not all at
Go
once.
ahead,
Yeah,
Mark.
okay. Well, again, we're not attorneys, so you can't, I don't want to assume that role for sure. And so I advise my clients to get an attorney to review that, get their input on it. I'm dealing with a development issue right now, or not an issue, but a property that it's raw land. It's prime for development, and we're talking about attorneys back and forth, and we're involved in that process, but attorneys have to be involved, I think.
Yeah, I think it depends on the client, right? I have clients that have their own attorneys on retainer or on staff. I had another client, a big, large nonprofit out of Houston I helped acquire some property in the Pearl, and they needed to rezone, and they asked, hey, how do we do that? And so I connected them with a zoning attorney.
Yeah. So speaking of zoning, I mean, that's when we start getting into city and county and do's and don'ts, or what you can do. How often is commercial agents, are you helping guide the client to the city or the county, or are you ever having to go and speak on their behalf when it comes to zoning and changes? Have you ever had anything like that, Patricia?
So for me, I rely a lot on One Stop Development Services down off of South Alamo. They're great on the phone. They're great in person, directing clients to go over there. I don't like being the responsible one to do it, right? Because a lot of times they've got to go there for C of O or zoning. But for my purpose, if we've identified a couple of properties, it's important to go and speak to them to find out what the future plan for the city is, or is it going to be difficult to get that zoning change, or are they seeing progress in that direction? And so rely a lot on those city services, but then also I deal with stuff that's in the county. So I've got like a little cheat sheet, you know, here's who you speak to about driveway permits, here's who you talk to with the fire marshal, here's who you speak to with all the different people that are at, you know, that are going to be involved with it. But I'll make some of the initial calls, but I try to get my client involved to
Yeah.
obviously say, you know what your business is going to look like, you know what your intention is. I don't want to speak on your behalf for that. So let's either conference call it in, or here's their information. And if you see that it's going to work for you, then we'll take the next step.
That makes sense. Eric, I know you had something like that a few months back. I think it might have even been on that Methodist deal where they were having to change some stuff. Walk us through like the involvement and having to get with council or city employees. What is that like?
No, that wasn't the Methodist deal. That was, I think the address is 821 West Grayson. It was a former nursing home on West Grayson in the Pearl. The owner, it had been boarded up, and they had security fencing around it for about a year. They were planning on selling it for the site to be raised, for a developer to come in, raise that, meaning to scrape it off the land, and then they were targeting a developer for multifamily or condos or townhomes. So the seller had it rezoned to a higher use for development, but then my client, they operate in the drug and alcohol rehabilitation site, and so they like former nursing homes because they have individual rooms with bathrooms, and so they wanted to basically have it rezoned. In this case, it was going to be a down zone, so making it less attractive. And so we had to work through the intricacies of, because the seller doesn't want you to go in and lower the zoning on their property, because then if the deal falls out, then they have a property that's less valuable, right? So we had to work through that again with zoning attorneys and with the attorney that wrote the PSA, the purchase and sale agreement. It was a several month process, because you meet with the Planning and Zoning Commission, then you meet with city council, and all these meetings are scheduled a month or so apart. And so it took about 3 months before we were able to have that property rezoned, and then we closed on it, and everyone was happy.
Yeah. And so, you know, with residential, I feel like we go back and forth a lot between calls pretty fast in terms of just the rate of communication. Is that the same in commercial? Because I've always heard commercial agents take a while to return phone calls.
I would say it's about 3 to 4 times longer. Usually on the residential side, we can get an answer within hours, a day, maybe. But on the commercial side, it does take longer for some agents to get back to you. Okay. Again, not all agents are made the same. Some get back to you right away, but usually, unfortunately, the norm is that it may take a few days for somebody to get back to you. Yeah. And that's just an answer. And I know somebody like myself wants answers right away. I'm impatient, so
that's a lot of agents. Yeah. So I always found that interesting when they do a commercial deal, or they start to grow in commercial, and they realize how long it sometimes takes to get calls back.
Yep. That's exactly how long it takes. It takes days. So you just have to kind of wait and be patient.
Yeah. Now, what did you guys do to make that transition into commercial? I mean, there's the standardized stuff that our licensing entity, TREC, requires from the agents, but what are personal steps you would do as a residential agent making that transition into commercial?
I was going to say, I mean, you know the guideline that you can do on there, but for myself, I went the CCIM way, right? So that's...
And explain what CCIM is.
So CCIM stands for Certified Commercial Investment Member. It's considered the doctorates of commercial real estate. It's an expensive and very lengthy process, but it's great education, right? So you also have the TACS, which is... I'll let Labib went through that program. You could probably go through and talk more about that, so I don't, speak the whole time, but there's a lot of great things to make you competent, right? The thing is your regular license, when you go get your residential license, you have the right to sell commercial, but it doesn't make you competent. Yes. And so there's so much more involved. There is resources out there, but you have to invest in yourself to do that.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about, what was it, TACS?
TACS, so what that is, it stands for Texas Accredited Commercial Specialist. So it all boils down to education. And, just like on the residential side, you've got so many different classes that you can take. Same thing on the commercial side. The more you educate yourself, the better it is. The more you know, the more knowledge you have, the better you can serve your client.
Yeah.
Rather than going into a transaction blindfoldedly, like Mark said earlier, a lot of the stuff is not just fill in the blanks. It's stuff that attorneys draft up. So you have to have knowledge about that. You have to have knowledge about different aspects as well, and not just, hey, I'm just going to fill in a contract, negotiate a price, and we've got a deal. That's not what it's about.
With residential, I have found, especially over the last few years post-COVID, so much change is taking place, but at a much faster rate than what the industry's typically used to. In commercial, are y'all seeing a lot of those changes as well? And do you have to stay on top of your continuing education throughout the year at the same rate you would with commercial? I mean, Mark, you're always very industry driven. Tell me what's happening in commercial in terms of post-COVID.
Man, I don't know if I can answer that, but I'll do my best here. Goodness gracious. I mean, it's all about communication. You have to look at what laws, and I look at the local laws, not so much the federal and state. Those federal and state trickle down for sure. But as far as local, you've got zoning ordinances, you've got changes that come about in the city that you have to be involved in. I get super involved in my community, in the chamber, I go to city council meetings, I go to planning and zoning meetings, and then the state association with the Realtors Association, I get very involved in that. And I'm going to tell you what, I learn from others a lot, and then the various committees that you serve on and so on and so forth. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, no, yeah, that does answer, and I'm curious because with residential, well, being an agent that's been involved at associations, you don't typically run into a lot of commercial agents at the association. So tell me, you see benefit of getting involved at the state and at least association to get some commercial education?
Right, but a lot of the folks that I'm associating with, good friends, Trey Bates as an example, who's vice president of Texas Realtors Association. He was a commercial broker in the Corpus Christi area for decades. And so these are good friends that you just kind of associate with, you learn from them. It's just in conversations, passing conversations. I mean, when you do this over a number of years, hopefully you're absorbing good things. So,
You're right. Yeah. Other conferences you go throughout the year, do you feel like you have to stay on top of as much as you do in residential in terms of changes, Eric?
Have to, want to. Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to serve your clients as best as possible, the more educated you are, right, the better it's going to be. Talking about tax courses, right, and that is one requirement that we have here at KW, that if someone that's in residential currently wants to eventually make the move over into commercial, that is a course, the TACS, the Texas Accredited Commercial Specialist, a course that's required in order to be on the commercial team. And so if there's anybody that's considering a move into commercial or adding that as a service for your clients, I would encourage you to at least go out and register for the TACS course. Trek has made a big deal just in the past few years because there have been so many people that have kind of dabbled in commercial real estate. I think there's a misconception that, well, if I make a mistake or whatever, and if there's legal action that's brought against me, my errors and omissions will cover me. Errors and omissions won't cover you. They're going to look and then say, what were you doing commercial real estate, selling commercial real estate? You have no experience. So I think, getting that education and showing that you've worked with other commercial brokers, worked on other deals, that will go a long way in expanding your knowledge.
Does that apply to if you are familiar in leasing and then suddenly someone says, hey, I want to build a development or I want to do something that's completely different avenue? Does the competency factor come into play with commercial agents where they refer to other people within specialties, or do you find commercial agents typically say, okay, well, I'm in commercial, let me learn this avenue as well?
It's amazing. So as I mentioned at the very beginning of this, I've been doing this about 9 years, and Mark, you said 27, I think is what you said, right? And maybe I'm going on a limb here, but I would imagine even after 27 years, you probably still consult other brokers on because we all either specialize in something or we know that there's another broker that has more experience in that area, whether it be development or investment sales or whatever it might be. So I don't know if that answers your
That's
question
a
or if you want
great
to expand
point.
on that.
For me personally, I'm in New Braunfels. I know New Braunfels well and the surrounding areas. San Antonio might be considered a surrounding area, but you know what? I'm not comfortable. So I've got a client that owns property, commercial property here in San Antonio. And when he wants to put it on the market, I reach out to one of our KW commercial agents here and partner with them on that. And so because I'm not familiar enough, in my opinion, with this market. So I'm going to rely on someone like Patricia here to help me with something like that. So that's critically important. I'm putting my client's best interest first.
And at the end of the day, too, I think our clients respect us a lot more if we say, I don't know, but let me bring someone else in. I think there's a pressure that we always have to have an answer to every question that comes up, right? And I think if we say, look, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. And it goes back to the earlier point. And then you follow up with a phone call, right?
Right.
It doesn't, I feel like whether it's residential or commercial, it really doesn't take a lot to be successful in our world if you answer the phone, you return phone calls, and you do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Right? And that goes across the board.
Yeah. I think that's one of Dave Ramsey's big quotes of like, hey, if you just show up on time and do what you say you're going to do, you're 90% ahead of the rest of your competition. And golly, isn't that the truth in this industry as well? So talk to me about your specialties, because you each do have different experience and specialties. Mark, let's start with you. What do you really consider your specialty to be within commercial?
New Braunfels.
New Braunfels.
Yeah, I don't know how to
Mr. New
answer that
Braunfels.
because I represent buyers, I represent sellers, whether it's land, commercial land, or whether it's improved property, and I do an awful lot of leasing. I represent a handful of landlords or property owners, and I handle the leasing for them. And in that process, when I'm marketing their properties for lease, I come across other people that are looking for space that maybe we don't have, but I help them find a lease space.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of a generalist, but I really specialize and focus on New Braunfels and then the close neighborhoods or towns, communities nearby.
I like that. Patricia, what would you consider your commercial specialty to be?
I'm going to go and refer back to kind of what Mark is saying. I would consider myself a generalist, but when you work at a brokerage like Keller Williams that has so many residential agents and you're one of the top ones in the country, you have to know a little bit about a lot of stuff, right, to be able to service the referrals that we get here in the office as well. And fortunately, the education allows us to learn a whole lot about all of it. But we do have to team up and partner with other stuff. But if you wanted to say, what is your specialty? What is your niche? Multifamily for me has been the passion.
Yeah.
I love multifamily. Have done a lot of multifamily for that, but generalist is really what I would say it is.
What do you think your biggest multifamily project was? I'm just curious.
Right now, I'm working on an 86-unit apartment
86
complex.
units. Wow. It's a lot of research, I'm sure, that goes into it.
is. Well, and it's when you're looking at the difference with property managers, Eric speaks to this as well. He does a lot of multifamily as well. I mean, we have a challenge that you can only do what is being given to you, right? Yeah. You've got clients who self-manage. You've got some that property manage. You've got some that do a number of other things. And so we're relying on third-party sources to give us stuff. And then you've got the savvy buyer who knows a mismanaged property and what the upside looks like. And then you've got those who say, we need a lender to have this beautiful packaged present handed to us that is going to be lendable, right? Because if they're not cash strong, they have to have it packaged well. And so, that's kind of the challenge. You may want something, but if it's not packaged properly for you to get the proper financing on it, that's not a deal for you. You're not the right buyer for this property, even though you love the property.
You're right.
So those are part of the challenges that I think we deal with as well.
Okay. Labib, what would you consider your specialty to be?
Overall, I would, again, it's the same answer that you've already heard, but I would say a lot of the commercial agents would be considered generalists along with myself. If you were to ask me what one specific area would be, I would say the medical industries where I'm heavily concentrating all my energy on, and have been. mainly because of the current clients and my previous clients are all of the medical background.
What are some of the things you have to think about handling medical clients that you wouldn't a traditional? Like I've heard there's things like if there's x-rays, you have to look at certain things within the walls and these types of things that, as residential would go way over my head. Yeah.
When we get into a space, be it, if they're developing from land or if they're buying an existing building, there are certain things they're looking for in terms of how big the space can be, how many patients they're looking to have, how much they're looking to grow, and so on, right? So we have to kind of forecast for the future versus just looking for immediate gains and them outgrowing the space within 2 years. So we're looking at a 5-10 year forecast for them. And then, in that space, will they be doing any sort of imaging and whatnot? If so, will there be enough amperage in terms of power and so on, right? Will the center have enough power? If not, what do we need to do to upgrade it and so on? So there's many things I look at versus just, hey, here's a building that's 3,000 square feet. Let's buy it. It may not work, but let's buy it. Well, no, we just waste our clients' money, and then they're going to end up selling it or not use you again because you just help them buy something that's of no use to them.
Do you think when we see these businesses that, like, sometimes you see, I don't know, a dental office or a Pokemon card sales place, I have no freaking idea. But when you see like these businesses that go out of business that weren't there a very long time, does any of that play into an agent that maybe didn't do enough research for their client? Like, does that happen where they go, okay, maybe they were led down the wrong path and that's why that specific business model didn't work out in that location?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they were not guided down the right path. I feel like sometimes, and I'm a very strong believer in this, location is definitely key in everything you do, right? So if you could have the most successful business model, but if the location for your client wasn't the best, it's not going to succeed no matter what kind of location it was or what kind of business it is.
So speaking of location then, how much of the research do y'all have to do on traffic patterns and population, or is it a mix of what the data shows plus knowledge and boots on the ground?
I think all of the above. A good example of this would be, you're looking to develop a center right before a highway off-ramp, right? So in other words, the highway is exiting right after your center. Well, now traffic has to go around and make a big loop and sometimes go 3 or 4 miles out of the way in order to go to that center. Whereas if you just placed it, 100 yards down the road, I mean, obviously the land may not be available, but that'd be a. So when you hear in real estate, location, that is amplified in commercial real estate, right? It's all about visibility, ease of access, zoning obviously is important.
Yeah. What would you consider your specialty to be, Eric?
I'd say investment real estate to include multifamily, basically anything that trades on a cap rate, right?
Yeah.
And owner-user property.
Yeah.
I do a fair amount of tenant representation as well.
Okay. I know in residential we talk a lot about there's a kind of a general rule of thumb of, okay, 80% of the business is done by about 20% of the higher producing agents. Does that apply to commercial, or do you think it's different? Is it still a small community that's doing most of the business?
Small community, yes. I mean, I think last I heard, and you probably know better than I would, Grant, I think there's like 11,000 agents or whatever licensed in through SABOR right now.
Plus or minus, yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say probably only about 15% of those are commercial agents. And so I do see a lot less turnover with commercial brokers. Obviously the past couple of years have been unfortunately very difficult for a lot of agents. I think specifically on the residential side, we've seen a lot of people not renew their license. We don't see that as much on the commercial side, so I would think that would imply that there's a larger share of commercial brokers that are, consistently busy and doing fairly well.
Yeah. Do you run across a lot of the same commercial agents over and over in your transactions?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, like Eric said, there's by far less commercial agents, so you're dealing with a smaller piece of the pie. because you've got so many fewer commercial agents. So you're dealing with, generally, when you're dealing with a broker, a commercial broker, you're dealing with the same guys. In New Braunfels, I mean, probably, less than 30 agents, I guess, that are commercial agents. So you deal with the same ones over and over again. But what's happening in our community is you got agents from outside of the community, even outside of the state, that come into play, and that probably plays more into what y'all deal with here in San Antonio. That you've got not only here in San Antonio, but out around the state and even outside of the state. So.
Yeah, so don't burn any bridges is what you're saying. You might be crossing them again dealing with those
Right.
agents.
Yeah.
Patricia, you were going to add to that?
I was going to add to it just to say, there's also a misconception because if you talk about like the board of realtors, a lot of commercial brokers are not realtors.
Right.
Right. So it's hard to follow what that trend is. But those that are, we see consistently working because, they're in our circle. But if I know that I'm going to be dealing with a restaurant client, if I'm going to be dealing with an industrial client, there's some key people that I know you're constantly going to be seeing on CoStar that I want to pick their brain to say, hey, do you have something coming up in the pipeline? Because I know you're the person who handles this area. And so you do start seeing those trends of who's picking up those types of properties, who represents those clients. And so, we just keep a database of those agents too.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, and you probably experience this as well. I mean, there's times when I reach out to other commercial agents, not in our firm, but outside of our firm, and just to pick their brain on certain ideas and ask them for what do they think about this. I want their input, because if you get their input and it's honest, which it generally is, you get their input, there's a chance that you'll end up working with them, maybe on that deal, but on something else for sure. So having relationships there is a good thing, and respecting each other, two-way street. So I think that's critically important.
Do you find the communication and the working process between two commercial agents is similar in style or different in style than when you're working with another agent on a residential deal?
I feel like it's for me. It's been very similar. I don't think it's been polar opposites. Sometimes I get that on the residential side, but on the commercial side of things, I think we're on the same sheet of music. I haven't come across anybody that's been a polar opposite yet.
Yeah.
On the commercial side of
They
things.
always say residential is more emotional than commercial. So do you sometimes do a residential deal and go, oh yeah, this is why I do commercial?
And there are no emotions tied to commercial. Zero. It's just like Eric was saying. It's all about numbers, your rate of return, and if the property makes money, it's a go. If it doesn't, it may not be a go.
Yeah.
So.
Talk to me about KW Commercial specifically. And Eric, you'd be a good one on this because I know you had been, I think at one point, with a large commercial firm. What's the idea behind joining KW Commercial? Because a lot of people look at KW as just a residential commercial or company, and then you've got like the big mega commercial companies. What are the benefits of being at it like a KW Commercial and having that network?
Well, definitely. I mean, network. I mean, you just answered it, right? So, the funny, a lot of people, when they think strictly commercial houses, they think CBRE, JLL, Transwestern, Cushman & Wakefield. Those are all great brokerage houses. The difference, and I don't want to say one is better over the other or whatever. The difference there is that the majority of their brokers, they specialize in one product type, and anything outside of that, they refer to somebody else. And so I feel like our overall knowledge of the market is a little bit broader because, as everyone here attested to, a lot of us are generalist. But we also, at the same time, we're all top producers here at KW. We know our strengths and our limitations. But I mean, I think when you look at the more what's referred to as resimercial, which are residential firms that have a commercial side as well, KW consistently ranks in the San Antonio Business Journal, at least here in San Antonio, as one of the top 3 or 4 in square footage leased and sold. So
Interesting.
We have the knowledge, we have the expertise, we have a great referral network here. at KW with we're obviously in the largest KW office, I think, in the world as far as agent count. Great leadership.
Yeah, we'll take it. We're getting some feedback, Salo.
The resources here that we have are incredible.
Yeah. Awesome. Salo, can y'all hear that as well, or is that just in my ear? Okay, there we go. We're good? Okay, cool. As we're wrapping things up, so talk to me about the consumer side. So consumer is looking for a commercial agent to help them out. What are some of the things a consumer needs to be asking to qualify their commercial agents? Because you do have a lot of those residential agents that sometimes dabble, which at Heritage we're very strict on the policies and what it takes to get into commercial real estate. But not all brokerages have those guardrails in place, and you get a lot of agents that'll say they get a commercial lead and say, yeah, sure, I can take that on. So as a consumer, what do they need to be watching out for to make sure that their best interest is being looked out for? Mark, you look like the gears are turning. You want to say something there?
It's, I think what's most important here is what's your reputation. For me, I take great pride in my reputation because where are your feet grounded? What are your core beliefs? So what do you stand for? That's my reputation is critical, and so I would think that when people reach out to you, they're wanting someone they can trust. They want somebody that's got experience. They want to know, they want to know what your background is, what your experience and all that kind of stuff, what your education maybe. But I think it's what do you stand for? What do other people say about you? I don't know that I answered your question directly on that, but I think that's really important. I mean, what do you think, Eric?
I completely agree. When I got started in real estate, and again, I started on the residential side, you have two paths you can go down, right? And I decided that, I was going to tell my client, advise them correctly, even if that meant a slower sale or transaction, right? Because I knew at the end of the day that if I did the right thing by my client, that was going to benefit them and myself both, right? So I have this one client, he sends me properties probably once a week. He's like, what do you think? What do you think? And more times than not, I tell him, I don't think this is a good fit, right? So reputation, 100% is everything, right?
Yep. Well, real quick, I'm going to add something.
Please.
When I look in CoStar and other things like that, when I see that CCIM like Patricia has, that means a lot to me. That's critically important as well. So I think her getting her credentials there, that is huge. I mean, that speaks volumes because there's very few that I haven't done it. So,
Yeah, I know as a residential agent, when I've referred out commercial in the past, CCIM is something I sometimes look for as a designation to automatically say we're getting the best.
I actually have my CRS of all things. So,
which is a very big residential designation. So yeah, that's very good. Okay, so as we round things out, agents that are looking to grow into commercial, what is your advice to them on where to start? What do they need to be aware of, or something that you wish you knew when you were getting into commercial? Labib, you want to start us off?
Of course. I would say a couple of things. First off, shadow somebody. See if you like the field. See if you like what you're seeing. It's not. Don't get in for the money. I mean, if you're getting in for the money, this is not the place to be. Shadow somebody if you like it. Great. Get the education that supports it. And then take the next steps after that. But going back to if you're doing this for the money, we know how long these transactions can take. You're not going to get a ton of money in 30, 40, 50 days. It's just not going to happen. So if you'll just take care of your end, take care of your clients, I think the rest just follows. Everything will just fall into place, and it'll take care of itself automatically.
I love it. Patricia?
I would agree with that. I mean, we've got a fiduciary duty to our client. And, when the opportunity comes in, we've got so many residential agents that literally their database is individuals that are buying homes, but they work somewhere. Mm-hmm. So whether they own the company, they work somewhere. I had the privilege of having a client who wanted me involved in that process, but knew what it was going to take to get there, right? He wanted me educated. And so for those that are interested in doing it, you can't do it part-time. The fees will eat your lunch. It's
Yeah,
not
because
cheap.
commercial fees are much higher than
They're
residential.
much higher. You know, here at KW, what I love is that we do have guidelines, but you know, to better serve your client, you can't just put a little metal sign in the yard and stick it on MLS and think it's going to get the job done, because I prefaced it earlier to say most commercial brokers are not realtors. They will never see your listing on MLS. It's not going to show up on Zillow. It's not going to show up on Realtor.com. It's going to be on LoopNet, Craigslist, CoStar, you know, any of these other databases that are out there. And so those are all fee-based websites that if you're not contributing to spending money to be on those platforms, you're doing your client a disservice. And so LoopNet is owned by CoStar, who also owns Homes.com. And so it's a little bit of a monopoly that goes on there, quite honestly. But if you're not going to play to be on those sites, the investors are never going to find you. And we've got people that, I mean, I can look at the analytics on my CoStar and I can see every, you know, every address, you know, wherever the address is coming from, that person looking, it's all over the state, you know, all over the state. Sometimes it's out of the country. And so if you're not on those platforms, they're never going to know about your listing. So
So
I'm
be
just
prepared
saying,
to
be
make the
prepared.
financial investment.
It's definitely, you got to invest in not only yourself for the education, but you've got to be able to market it
Yeah,
to the world.
And just being transparent, I mean, here to quantify it, I mean, we're talking between CoStar and LoopNet fees. Some of us are paying over $1,000 a
Easy.
month,
Yeah,
right?
a month.
I mean,
Yeah,
a month,
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's in addition to office fees and other marketing fees that we have.
And then most of our signs, I mean, if we do commercial signs, we're dealing 4 foot by 8 foot signs on a property, not
Yeah.
just a metal sign,
Yeah,
right?
which
So
means
there
you're
is an
also not
investment.
just dropping it in the trunk of the car. You've got to have somebody to install it and deliver it. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a big investment in there.
So, but
Mark,
it's
what
great.
advice would you offer to the newer commercial transitioning agent?
I think everybody touched on really the key points here. You want to you want to reach out and talk with somebody that you're comfortable with, and you want to ask them, can I shadow with you? Can I just kind of go with you? Can I partner with you maybe? And work with them and go through a process, because we talked about this an hour ago. I just had a 2-acre lot that took 570 days to close.
Wow.
And so that's not the norm, but 9 months, 12 months, 15 months is pretty much the norm. And there's a lot of pitfalls along the way. So being, you know, partnering with somebody, learning from somebody is critically important, I think. And then of course there's classes that you can take, but learning firsthand experience from others is really the most important thing, I think.
I love that. Eric?
I mean, they all said it perfectly. You know, finding a good mentor. You know, any one of us up here would love to help anybody out that has an opportunity. And at the same time, also just having because of the length of time that it takes to close some of these transactions, not having a one transaction mindset, right? Having more of a 10,000-foot view. In other words, I need this transaction to close. It's, you know, what is my year going to look like, right? What is because if you get focused on one transaction, especially if it's a development deal that has probably, if we're being honest, probably a 50% chance of success of it actually, you know, closing, it can be a little disheartening if you're wrapped up in the emotions of that one transaction.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So be prepared to make the financial investment, preparing yourself or develop yourself in terms of education and become competent for your clients. I like it. All good stuff. Well, and if you're a commercial agent or a residential agent looking to grow into commercial, reach out to us. We'd love an opportunity to meet. Eric is our director of commercial here at Heritage, but at KW Commercial, it's also on the national platform. So we've got national leadership, education, networking opportunities. So you're getting it both at the local level and the national level. Guys, I want to thank y'all for the opportunity to sit with y'all, pick your brain, ask some of the questions that the residential agents always think about and might be too intimidated to ask at times. But they are not scary. They will not bite your head off. If you see them around the office, reach out to them, stop by. They'd love to talk to you and shed some light on their experiences and how that can benefit you. If you're one of our current agents, remember we've got Turkey Day happening this Thursday. That's November 20th, where we give all of our our agents frozen turkeys and some pies to go out and enjoy either with their families for Thanksgiving or to donate it to somebody in need. So we've got over 600 turkeys arriving here on Wednesday with the big freezer truck. We've got all of our volunteers to line up, and we're getting questions about the rain. It will still be taking place along with our International Thanksgiving, so we look forward to seeing you guys there. Again, I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for what you do
Thanks,
and
Grant.
how you contribute
for
to the
having us.
company, and we'll see you next time. All right.